If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to another edition of Iconic Creators. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. It is snowing outside at the time of this recording because Wisconsin loves to make things interesting. However, my guest today is thankfully in much warmer weather. At least she was the last weekend when I was watching her Instagram stories. She is the host of the Good Content podcast. She is over 20 plus years in marketing and media experience. She is a wealth of knowledge. She's just a joy to interact with and watch on her journey, and I'm excited to hear more about her. Please help me welcome Shannon McKinstrie to the podcast today. Shannon, welcome to Iconic Creators.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction. That was so kind. Thanks. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to have you here too. Yeah, so I'm very jealous. You were in the 70s this last weekend.
Yes. Well,
and
you know what?
it is
funny.
snowing
now it's cold
currently.
And rainy. It's not cold and rainy.
So
North Carolina likes to tease us. They're like, here's a little spring, and then just yank it from us. So.
Correct. Yeah. We it was raining this morning when I took my kids to school, and by the time I got home, it was like big snowflakes sideways.
My gosh!
I'm like, what are we doing? Like,
In
why
March?
do we live here? Correct. We know we've got at least another month to 4 months of winter, so who really knows anymore at this point? Oh my goodness. Well, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about social media and marketing and all that fun stuff. So I'm excited that you're here. You are someone that I've admired from afar for a while, and it's been fun to see your journey. So I took some time actually today before you came on to watch the About Me video that you have pinned on your Instagram page, and I almost started crying. I'm a parent as well. So watching you talk about your why and everything is just fantastic to me. So I would love for my audience that maybe hasn't heard that story, give us just a little bit of that, why you started what you're doing now, and give us just a brief summary of what you do, in case people aren't familiar with that.
Yeah. So I teach, I just teach and educate people on social media marketing because I've been in the field a long, long time. But back in 2013 was when I was like, wait, can I pivot over to social media marketing? Because I was really struggling to get a marketing job. I had to pivot from broadcasting into sales, and I was just miserable. And I was like, this isn't for me. And that's around the time that social media really started going from personal to business. And I was like, wait a minute, this kind of merges my love of copywriting, video editing, all of it. And I was like, this is great. So, but there weren't really jobs listed as social media managers in 2013. It was like a fad. They were like, yeah, right. It was something they just threw at like admins at, or receptionists or something to do.
Very much so, yep.
Yeah. And so I actually was one of those people that they were like, who wants to man the Facebook page? And I was like, me, and I wasn't paid extra for it, but I loved it. And that's
Absolutely.
when I knew I don't ever think I was cut out for one, being a business owner, or two, not working in a 9-to-5 because I'm very social. Like, I'm not confident in business world, but I love being out there and, so I was really excited to go back to work while I was pregnant. But then we had this very big scare when I had my first daughter, where really I almost died and hemorrhage and all this. To spare you the details, it was very scary. I was in ICU. And ever since that day, I was like, I can't go back to work. I can't leave this child. I didn't get to be with her the first couple of days of her life. So the guilt and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if I could just do social media management from home, Yeah. And my husband and I, how much daycare costs. He was like, okay, if you can just get like enough to just help with half the rent.
Yes. Yep.
Just, so I got a few realtors in the local DC area where I'm from to, they were paying like $100 a month. I was like, oh my gosh, like they're trusting me.
Yep. It's the greatest thing.
It was. And then also to make a little extra money, I was like, I would go and take photos, and I was just doing whatever I could to stay home with my daughter. And that was 2014. And then by 2016, I was like, oh my gosh, people actually like really will pay for this. And it was starting to morph into this, what it is now. And yeah, Instagram really was what made me be able to charge more because it was extra work. It wasn't just putting an article on Facebook.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, so that's how it all started. And then I started teaching classes in local co-working spaces, and it just blew up from there because people really realized like, oh, this is not an option. We have to be on social media.
Correct. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I feel like from a social media perspective, right, you're so right. It was very much like an afterthought of like, oh, here's this fad. Like, I guess we should probably do it a little bit. And it was Facebook for such a long time, right? And then Instagram decided to kind of, sneak around and be like, hey, like we actually could do things. And now obviously we've seen, I would say, a very dramatic shift away from Facebook, right? I think that Instagram has become the number one for so many. And obviously TikTok, of course, YouTube has its place as well, depending on who you talk to and how many different rabbit holes you want to go down, right? Exactly. But in that regard, but you, from what I can see, you seem to be all in on Instagram specifically for how you do your business, how you market yourself. What is it about Instagram specifically that is so perfect, I guess, for what you do?
Yeah, I think because it's always, every platform is going to say they're about community, but I really, truly feel like Instagram is really heavily in like community based. Yes. Even TikTok, I think they try to say it's really not. Like, I know what I'm
really not.
It's not. And as much as they want to say it is, it's an entertainment app. It's
correct.
And same with YouTube. I don't feel like people on YouTube feel really touchable or approachable. Like Instagram is like, really helps your brand feel approachable because I can see what you're doing in real time. And I think
it's the reason you're literally on my podcast right now. Like I was like, I'm going to just send a DM and I'm like, I don't think she'll ever read it. And here you are. So
yes. And
that's how it works, right?
And that's why I love stories. I could talk about stories all day long because I'm like, that's what makes people feel like, oh my gosh, that's my friend. I hear it all the time. They're like, I feel like you're my friend. I'm like, same. Like if we ever got together, I would just be like, we've known each other forever. But yeah, there's something magical about Instagram. And I think because it was such a personal app, that it still has that kind of culture, if you will, built around it.
What was the shift though? Because it was the pretty app, right? Like let's post the pictures, let's use the Valencia or whatever the filters were, right? Like I look back at some of my first Instagram posts and I'm like, oh, those filters. Like if it wasn't posted without a filter, like why are you even bother posting right on Instagram? Like when was the shift? Because I felt like it just happened overnight, but like was it that quick or was it more of a gradual shift to all of a sudden like now Instagram is the king?
Yeah, I think it was definitely gradual, but because it was funny when I started my social media management little business, it was Facebook and LinkedIn, right? I was posting for realtors on Facebook, LinkedIn, but then that was in 2016. Like they started the realtors that I was working with were telling their hairstylists about me and the boutique owner they knew about me. And all of a sudden by 2016, all these other businesses were like, no, we want in too. So that's when I kind of saw it. But again, it was still the content was very behind the scenes, personal type content. It didn't really shift to like the graphics and stuff that, now that we see carousels and things like that. I think I want to say like 2018 was when we really saw the big shift. So where all of a sudden it was like letter boards and flat lays and like all of a sudden, right?
True. Yeah.
It was less like, it was still pictures of your latte and your dog. And stuff like
it was like, I'm still doing a lot of that original stuff, just with not as many filters, right?
Right. Exactly. Because I think our cameras have gotten better, which has helped. But the filters, oh my gosh, I look back like, what is that? It's so bad. But yeah, I think it was pretty gradual, but once it took on, it went crazy. So I would say like 2018 was when we really saw like the major shift into like everyone was hopping on the bandwagon and trying to figure out content pillars opposed to just like, let me talk about what I did today.
Yeah. And I think that was what I think took people a little bit more time because they're like, wait a minute, Instagram is personal, but I can also use it for my business, right? Like I work as a photographer and a videographer full time. And I tell people 90% of the business that I get is because of Instagram, right? Wow. Like sharing my work and then DMs and I've tried email marketing, I've tried ads, I've done Facebook, I've tried all of those things. I would not probably still be in business today if I wasn't for Instagram, truthfully, based off of just the relationships, right? Like once again, just it's so much easier to connect with someone that you feel like might be out of your league or like just, you're not sure how to get a hold of the right person with an email. So you're like, I'm going to just send their social media person a DM and maybe they'll get it to the right person. And it's always, oh yeah, we've been looking for someone. You're like, oh, fantastic, right? Like you never know until you send the message, right? I think I've heard you say that before. Just send the message, right? Send the DM because you never know what's going to happen.
You never know. It really does and I don't know, like I know a lot of, people don't really check their LinkedIn messages as much, like, cause it's so much recruitment.
It's always spam. It's always spam.
Always. But Instagram, I don't know, it still has that personal touch. And that's why I think
correct.
I love to get on my soapbox and be like, stop overthinking it. Like it is still just like, tell me what you did today. Just tell me what you
Yeah.
did. It's like, it's not
Yes,
that
100%.
deep. Yeah.
It's so true. You have a pinned post on the top of your Instagram talking about like the 3 things to do to start your day on Instagram, which I think is so great because you're right. I get in my own way. My job is literally creating content for other people. And at the end of the day, the last thing I normally want to do is put my own content up. So that's why I have somebody on my team that does social media for my company and for me. And somebody yesterday was like, "You post all the time." I'm like, "Because I'm paying someone to do it."
It's not me.
Yeah, I'm like, because when I was in charge of it, I would go 2-3 weeks sometimes, be like, "Oh yeah, but we were busy. We were working, doing our own stuff for other people, right?" So, you obviously, it is your job, right? But do you ever have moments where you get that burnout or that piece of like, do I really need to do something right now? Like I'm helping all these other people do their stuff as well, right? Like how do you combat some of that?
Well, definitely when I was only doing social media management, I rarely posted. That's why I didn't really post much I didn't really get consistent until 2018 and 2019 because I was growing all these other people's accounts and I was like, wait a minute.
What about me?
I was like, wait, maybe I should do this for myself. But really that's when I knew I couldn't do all the platforms. So I posted on just Instagram and I would do LinkedIn like once a month. Now that I have more of a one-to-many offer and less one-on-one, I'm a lot more consistent on Instagram. I'm not daily. I am posting every day in March as just like I'm just doing this fun little
stories
series.
Wise though. You're up every day on stories though.
Every day.
I see you every single day, but posts are different.
Right. Yes. On the feed is different, but stories, even back when I couldn't post a lot, I was on stories every day because that's what would lead. People would be like, what are you doing? You do that. How much does that cost? And it would lead to so many sales. So I really just went all in on Instagram. That way, I didn't burn out because I was just focusing on one platform. Now, like you said, I have someone managing my Pinterest and YouTube and podcasts because I'm like, I can't do it all, but I still do my TikTok, my Instagram, and Threads and LinkedIn all myself. Oh, wow. And that's a full-time. I mean, it's a lot, but
100% it is, yeah.
A lot, but because I really, it's just the Reels Lab. So I have a little bit more time. That's why all my students, they post like 3 or 4 times a week, and that's plenty. Like, I'm like, you do not have to post every day. I never posted every day. Again, this will be the first time ever in my whole career that I've posted every day for a month. And just because I thought it'd be fun to do this series, but it's not a challenge to anyone. I'm just like, I'm doing it. You do not have to post every day. Like, you don't, like,
because it can be a lot.
Yeah. And if you look at the Reels tab, I mean, you'll see like they posted it like 12 weeks ago. Like Reels keep going. So it's like, it just proves that you don't have to post every day.
100%. No, I completely agree with that. And that's why I'm grateful. Like I said, because of what I do, I can kind of get brought back in, or I'll have a lot of my clients add me as a collaborator on posts, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm posting, right? So that helps and also hits double audiences. And my favorite is when like, is that okay if we tag? I'm like, please tag me, please add me as a collaborator. I'm like, you don't know how helpful that is for me to get in front of your audience. Absolutely. Because then that helps lead to more business as well. So that's always my favorite. When that kind of stuff comes through.
Yeah.
I want to talk for a moment. You mentioned your background in broadcasting. So that's what I went to school for originally. I was on camera, sports broadcasting and journalism. You spent time at CNN back in the day. Talk to me just a little bit more about that industry. And I know you obviously are in what you're doing now, but do you ever have that inkling, or is the podcast for you, like for me, how I scratch my itch a little bit of that, being like, I'm still doing it and I'm in the industry a little bit, but I love what I do as part of my day job or my business right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think I never thought I'd start a podcast, but no, it's good for me it's a great outlet for like the things I miss from that world.
Sure.
But I was always behind the scenes. I tried to be in front of the camera back in my Virginia Tech days. I actually auditioned for the sports, the sports show.
Oh, no way. Okay.
VTTV. And I turned 18 shades of red. I couldn't even do it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not meant to be in front of the camera. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll stick to what I know.
Stick to your lane. Yes. Yep, exactly.
And I love editing. I mean, I could sit in an edit bay.
Really?
Oh, I will.
Really?
So that's why I think when Reels came out, I was like, oh, snap. This is my thing. Like, I love them.
I've been waiting for this.
Yes. I love, like, even in high school when I was, analog, it's like, I spent like 20 hours or something creating my senior project, which was like a montage of me and my friends over the years. And I loved it. I mean, I loved going after school. I was like, I just nerded out. So I love editing. So in CNN, I was in the feeds department. I was in the control room doing fonts and graphics. And yeah, it's definitely a rush. I like chaos. So like the whole like breaking news.
I don't pick up on that from you. That's weird. I don't know. That's strange.
I'm like a calm person.
Yeah.
No, I always joke with people. I'm like, no, if like, that's why I always joke. I'm like, I'm the procrastinator. I need like excitement. So I just find it very exciting to like shoot content, edit content. Yeah. So I think that's why I'm like, I was definitely born in the right time because I love this. I really love it.
Isn't that funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I never tried to mock it but I was so set on being in front of the camera that I was like, I don't need to learn how to use the camera. I don't need whatever, right? Like someone else is going to turn it on and press record and I just got to stand there and talk, right? Like very arrogant, very full of myself when I was younger because I was young, dumb, and stupid, right? Like we just didn't know any better. And so the irony of being behind the camera now is like, interesting. Okay. But like, I've taken those abilities of how to interview people and how to be on camera. Cause you get those clients that are like, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how, or they look like they hate their life while you're talking. Like, this is your business. Like, let's be excited, right? Like what motivates you, right? Like, here, how about I try this and how about you try? They're like, oh yeah. Wow. Right. Yeah. So
but all those skills of knowing what it should look like is so important because not everyone knows that. And, for me, it's like, people I manage their socials for years. They'll send me videos. I'm like, slow down, pan. And they're like, what's pan? I'm like, I forget that like, they don't know these terms. Yeah. And slow down. So it's just funny.
Correct.
All those little things we learned have really come to help us out.
Let's talk about your company a little bit more and the team that you've built and grown. What does that look like? How did you decide to grow in the way that you did and how quickly did you grow? Very slowly. That's okay.
I was like zero confidence. 'Cause like I said, I was the social butterfly in the corporate world, but not like the person in meetings that felt comfortable. I was like, never really felt smart.
Same. I never really. Like, you and I are the same person on a lot of these things. I'm like, okay,
well,
yes.
I think it's also that like creative, those brains, like we think differently and
very much so.
It just didn't work in the corporate world where I was. So I was like, well, I'll just sit in the corner and, for the rest of my life in this cubicle, I guess. So then when I started my business, I had zero confidence. So I was like, who's going to pay me? Like, who's going to actually respect what I do? So for years, I severely undercharged. I let people walk all over me, text me on the weekends. Like a lot of my clients treat me like garbage. Not their fault. I just didn't set boundaries.
Didn't know any better.
But also no one respected what I did back then because it was like, oh, she posts pictures on our Instagram, whatever.
Right. So, you're getting paid to play on social media? Okay.
Exactly. Right. Oh, you play on Facebook. So really it was actually a title company in DC, a real estate title company who saw my LinkedIn post, hired me and was like, we'll pay you $2,000 a month. And I was like, excuse me? I almost fainted. I was like, Ryan, we are
like, rich. I'm done. We're good. Let's go.
But they like saw my skills.
That's crazy.
So it was just that one yes that you sometimes need. Like, I wish I could say like, it was mindset. No, it was because someone actually was like, no, I actually, and
they saw the value.
They did. So sometimes you're talking to the wrong people and they saw the value and I was like, holy crap. And then they were the ones that I was kind of a carrot they would dangle to get realtors in the door for like, I would do like a seminar.
Sure.
And it was awesome. And I blew up their Instagram and and then I started getting hired for more speaking engagements. And then people wanted more of my help, but I couldn't because I was like, I'm managing all these people. I can't. So that's when the consulting came about. Cause then I was like, okay, well I can at least like do an audit or, kind of guide you. So that's when the consulting came out and I was like, oh my gosh, people will charge $300 for like an hour-long phone call. I was freaking out. And then it just kept going. And then I had a mastermind. And then I, started the membership with my business partner. And then when Reels came about, that's when I really started doing high ticket offers. And I was like, this is insane.
Absolutely.
And then I was like, well, I want to help more people. So I took that high ticket and made it a membership, which is the Reels Lab. And that's pretty much all I'm doing right now is that and audits. And I still manage a couple people.
You do.
I still like having my hands in it, but people that, again, I'm very picky and I love managing to them. But so
I have two. That's good. I was like, I have two ways I want to go off of that. Really
Sorry,
quick, I want to come back to who you like to manage, but you talked about speaking. You announced recently that you're speaking at Social Media Marketing World on the big stage, not a little sideshow like you. You are the main attraction as part of the whole thing, right? But like,
crazy.
How did that happen? What are you talking about? Do you know?
I am. I'm talking about Reels.
Okay. Makes sense.
Is obviously a hot topic for them. That's why they put me on the main stage. I'm like, wait, excuse me. Like, what? Yeah, it's like, oh gosh. And so now my husband's coming because I was like, he's like my rock. I'm like, I need someone there, So
I need to look at you in the audience and be like, take a breath.
Yes.
Take a breath.
Calm down. Like, while I'm jumping up and down going, Yeah. So that happened because, again, it's relationships I've built on Instagram.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was on the Social Media Examiner podcast, and I've done lives with him. So he suggested, and then another person suggested me. So my name was in the suggestion box, if you will, twice. So they're like, okay, let's take a look at this girl. And then they had me on, and it went really well. And they had me on again. And, they kind of left it like, well, if you ever, if there's ever anything we can do. And I'm just like scared to ask. So then we hung up, and then I was like, it's funny. I actually had a couple glasses of wine. It was like 2 weeks later, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna shoot my shot.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, by the way, if you need more speakers at Social Media Marketing World, and they're like, yep. And I was like, what? Like, it just showed, like, ask.
Yeah.
And if they say no.
100%.
Okay. So yeah, that's how it happened. I just got ballsy after
That's
a couple
amazing.
glasses of Pinot Grigio.
Yes. There we go. That was my follow-up. I was like, what kind of wine? So as an Italian, I'm like, I need to know. Was it white? Was it red? Like, what was it?
And it was
I
like
love
within
it.
5 minutes. He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I can't believe I did that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
You had also talked before about how you're only managing a couple of clients right now personally. I don't know how deep you want to get into that, but what is the genre, the industry that you love the most that you say, nope, I want this. Like, I want my hands to be on it. I trust my team, but I would love to be the one to have my hands on it.
Yeah. Well, one's a realtor, because realtors have always, that's who I've been working with forever. And again, they're people that, like, I know if I give them a script, they'll do it. If I tell them to post it, they'll do it. Like, I had to sell myself and sell social media for so long. Like, if you don't get it and you don't get, like, I'm not.
Yeah.
So, and the other is a brewery, which is actually local here. So I can go there, shoot the content for
wonderful.
them. And they are just happy as a clam. They're like, we just want, I remember first thing he said to me was like, I just want butts and seats. He's like, I don't care about followers. So I have grown their account, of course, but like, they are really they just want to, like, they get it. They want to build a hyper local community. And so I create reels that, create an experience for them. So it's good for me because I can still see the insights of what's working. Study the brick and mortar versus, so it's been really cool. And I love creating content for them.
So from my perspective, I feel like from a content creator, right? I have bigger cameras that I like to use. I'm a Sony shooter, but I also have the DJI Pocket Osmo 3, which I don't know if you've used that or not before too. Are you all on your phone, or how are you shooting all of your content? You are? Okay, that's amazing.
I'm all on my phone, but so far I'm all on my phone, but I've been thinking more and more. I was like, I should probably get a really nice camera, but for them, they're just so happy with
Not necessarily.
Yeah. Well, what's the one?
I think it all depends, obviously, on what it is that you're trying to do, right? Yes, you could get the nice, big, fancy camera, but like I said, DJI came out with this smaller camera that's called the Pocket 3.
That's the one.
It's not very
That's the
big.
one I see on TikTok. Yes.
Yep.
That's the one I want.
$600, $700. I bought this a couple of weeks ago, and I've taken it to multiple shoots.
Cool.
And
I love that.
Clients love it. And it's almost like you pull out a party trick, because it fits, the whole bag is teeny tiny, right? And they're like, oh, what is that? Like, what is that? And it's got like this little, because it's got a Bluetooth microphone, right? Like
nice.
all the things, and it's the size of
whistles.
a little clutch essentially, or, if you got a little crossbody.
I was actually, because I see that thing all over
good.
TikTok, and I'm like, maybe I'll get that for Social Media Marketing World for my husband.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. Okay. But so for the reels because what's funny with the brewery too, we do a lot of like cap cuts, right? We do a lot of humor. So it's like a lot of the stuff we don't need. And that stuff goes crazy for them. So
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And you know what else is crazy with the brewery is that a lot of the photo dumps do better than anything. Like, I'm like, people underestimate the fact that, some people still just like to look at images and still like to see a picture of a beer and a dog,
Yeah. Because it's like, oh, okay, that's what it looks like, right? Like,
Yep.
that's why the lifestyle photo and video, a good marriage of the two, I feel like goes such a long way. And that's a lot of what I do. And you have to sell that experience and say, okay, if like you said for the brewery, if I'm not at the brewery, like, what would it look like if I was? Could I bring my dog? Oh, they have a dog there. Okay, great. Like, I want to sit by the fire pit and drink a beer and pet my dog. Like,
there you go.
Fantastic. We're going tonight. Here we go, right? Like, you have to sell that experience or that FOMO of like, oh, like what would like, oh, I wish I was there. That looks so fun, right?
Yep.
That makes such a big difference.
It does.
I have to ask, because you posted about this the other day. You have Publix by you, and I'm so jealous.
Yes.
And I was like, she's my people. I'm like, I lived in Florida for 7 years, and I didn't know what Publix was when I moved from Wisconsin as a young kid. So living there, and I was like, what is Publix? And then now anybody that's like, what is Publix? I'm like, how do you not know what Publix is? Like, it is the greatest grocery store. Their subs that they make with boar's head are phenomenal. Like, you will not find anything. Nothing touches it.
No.
It made me miss home. I was like, Publix.
I know.
Nice.
Well, it's funny. I moved to Atlanta for CNN, and that's where I discovered Publix. I grew up in DC. There wasn't Publix, and then I always joke with people, and I think I said that in the story. I was like, when people ask, why do you move to North Carolina? I'm like, oh, for the schools, for this. I'm like, Publix.
Yes. Like, until you've experienced one, like you can't fully like share it with somebody else. Like, you have to just experience it.
You have to, and that's what I mean. It like brings in so many DMs every time, because people will say the same thing. I used to live in Florida or the South, and they're like, oh, I miss it. I'm like, yeah, it's the best.
Yes. 100%. You had a great quote that I pulled from your video that you had posted, right? Talking about it, which I think is so powerful. It resonated with me when I watched it, as you said, there's no room for ego when you're building a business. I would love for you to just give me a little bit more on that, right? Like, what does that mean to you specifically, and what were you trying to communicate to those when they watch something like that? Yeah,
I think the way I like to say it, sometimes people, I'm like, look, we all started as interns, right? I mean, I started as an intern at C-SPAN. You know, I interned all sorts of places and didn't make a dime. And so if you come into this industry being like, look, I've got all this experience, here I am. It's like, no. I worked for free. I did free workshops. I undercharge. I still speak at some things for free. It's like, you gotta be willing.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And people don't always think they're like, oh, I'm not being paid. Like, it's okay. Like, if it's something you're passionate about, do it.
And it's going to lead to something. And
yes.
You got to remember, like, just because you've been on the scene in that industry doesn't mean anyone knows who you are, right? And even at social media marketing world, like, there would be people who have no clue who I am. And the online world is just blown up, right? And you got to remember, you still have to prove yourself. Just because you've got a big following doesn't mean a lot.
Correct.
I mean, I could have a huge following and not be good at my job. You know, like, but you still have to prove yourself. And that's why, especially people in our field, like, at least we can show with our videos and our scripts and things like that, like, look, we know what we're doing, but you still have to prove yourself, just because, again, it's almost like, so when you start a business, I think that's the most humbling thing, is like, you're starting over as like a little baby intern. And it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Yes. And I think once it's your name on the door, right, as it were, you do have that sense of pride, whereas you can say, oh, I work for CNN, or I work for you, whoever it is that you work for, right? Like, it's like, okay, like, I care about what I'm doing. But as soon as you see Shannon McKinstrie or Baxter Colburn on the door, you're like, oh, like, it is literally, if I don't do the thing, it won't happen, right?
Yes.
That type of thing. So trying to explain that to friends or family, or even some of the people that work for me, right? Like, you guys are all empowered by the work that I do. I have to do the thing and then give it to you to help continue to move us forward, right? If I get out of bed today and I decide not to do anything, the company, none of us are going to grow, right? The company's, nothing's going to move forward unless I empower it as the leader, right? So that's always a sobering thing too, to remember, of like, there's people counting on me today, that I have to get up and I have to do it. And it's not all about me, right? But like, it is, in a sense, right? Like, it is your company, you are the brand. So you do have to move yourself forward in that regard.
But yeah, it is a lot of pressure, and it is a lot of work, but I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way, really. You know?
100% agree. One other question before we play a quick game before I let you go. You talked about this in the beginning. You're a wife and you're a mom. the biggest thing I feel like anybody that is an entrepreneur goes back and forth on is the quote unquote balance of family and work, right? Like you work in an industry that never shuts off, right? And I do too, right? Like your spouse can be like, hey, why are you on Instagram again? It's like, no, I'm literally working, right? Like I'm not just scrolling, like I'm closing a deal right now that's going to help us pay our mortgage next month, right? Like whatever that is, right? Like how do you do your best for balancing, educating, and saying, yep, like mom's working right now, I'm working right now, and then I'm not. I'm going to put it away. I have 3 kids under the age of 8, right? Like we've got a lot going on. 3 boys. It's a lot of chaos here.
Gosh,
We got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Got a 10-month-old, like stuff's going on, right? Like, so how do you, or what are some of the things you've learned over time that help you set yourself up for success in that regard?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a set schedule, and I think that is probably not what a lot of people want to hear. I'm not a time blocker.
But if it works for you though.
Yeah. Well, my husband, he even said, he's like, your brain is on fire at night. And if that means I'm on my laptop from 8 to 10 while we're watching Netflix, he's okay with that. And but I'm also a great multitasker. Like I can literally be watching a show and be like doing my stuff. But we try to do, no phones at the same time and things like that. But I'm also, I'm very lucky in the fact that he works from home. His job is pretty flexible.
Okay.
So that helps. If that wasn't the case, like I would probably have my youngest in school in daycare, but she's home with me. Like right now she's at preschool, but it's only till 12:30, right? So I get 3 days a week where she's at school for 3 hours. So it's hard. So I literally just work when I can. So we'll go to a play place in the afternoon. I'll sit there for 2 hours and work. Luckily she's the best and she can play independently. But really I don't have any good advice. I just work when I can. Yeah. But I've also created offers that allow that to work. So
100%.
I used to offer one-on-one consulting. I can't anymore. And it makes me so sad because people message me all the time, like, do you have one-on-one? I'm like, I don't. Until a year from now, when my daughter is in kindergarten, I can't. Yep. So I've had to build this membership where I work a couple hours a day on that and do podcasts like this, I'm like, oh yeah, audits. I do audit, but again, I can do the audits at night. I can do the audits at 5 a.m. if I want to wake up early. So basically, and it's funny, my mentor, she was like, but Shannon, those 3 hours while Chloe's at school, like that should be you time. That should be going to work out, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. She's like, no, like you need Shannon time. I'm like, oh, that's why I'm so exhausted. But again, I'm addicted to this. Like I love what I do so much. And I think because it's a hobby, quote unquote, there's a fine line between like, okay, this is a hobby, but close the laptop. So like last night I was like, I'm closing the laptop. It was 8:30. I was like, I'm done.
Yep.
And then I'll answer DMs throughout the day. So again, I'm very sporadic. But I think it's good to people to know that that's okay. Like some people are great at time blocking. I just never know when my brain's going to be going crazy.
Correct.
So
100%.
I carve out time in the morning where like this morning I recorded this morning's reel. We've got the podcast and then I've got my coaching call and then I'm done for the day.
Amazing.
So you just have to really, again, create offers around how your brain works.
Yep.
And I also love doing the audits on my own time because if someone scheduled an audit for like 2:00 in the afternoon on Thursday, my brain's done. And it might not come back.
100%.
Right? Because I've got a toddler bullying me. So it's like, I can't.
So true.
So when I record the audits for my clients, when someone does get an audit, they know like this was because I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm fired up.
Yep.
So
here we go.
Yeah. So you just create offers around what works for your life right now. And in a year, I'll probably bring back one-on-one calls and I'll love it. But right now I just can't. So.
And I commend you on that, knowing your season of life, knowing what you can and can't do, right? Like, and sometimes it is that trial by fire a little bit to be like, oh no, like I really feel that parent guilt. I feel less fulfilled or whatever it is, right? Like, because, you've got those little footsteps, right? Like my oldest is 8, but I'm like, he was just the 10-month-old in my arms. So I'm like this goes by way too fast.
It does.
So I'm like, okay, like I do need to and they love what I do. Thankfully, they're always asking they want to be YouTubers, right? Like, Dad, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, okay, like you don't need to do that, right? But like, but they have that interest and that passion of like, show us the video that you made. I'm like, okay, right. So like, there's that love for it, but also they know that Dad can put stuff away. Dad is a lot happier than I've ever been in any corporate job I've ever worked.
Yeah.
And I can go to school field trips. I can bring them to school every day and pick
Isn't
them
that
up,
the
right?
best?
Like I couldn't do that before. It
No.
was always a split time or every couple of days. So those 20 minutes in the car are the best, right? Because you got all the crazies to and from school, and
Yep.
I wouldn't trade any of that. Like that's the
No.
stuff that my clients maybe don't see, but they're affording me that opportunity based off of the work that we do, that I get to do
Yeah.
all of that for my family, and I love that.
I love that. Yeah. And same here. It's like the field trips were like a big thing. I was like, I can't wait to be able to have a job that I don't have to request PTO just because I want to.
Correct.
Take
My
my
wife
kid to
does.
the
Yeah,
zoo.
she's like, I gotta use PTO. I'm like, aw. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, can I? Yes, you can. I'm like, hey, we're good. I'm off today. Like, sorry.
I love
Like,
it.
yeah. And she's like, yeah. She works in banking, so she gets the random bank holidays off though. So you get like the Columbus Day, and then she's off, and she's like, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, we're closed today too. Why
Yeah,
not?
I know.
Right?
My
Like,
husband's a
I want
government employee, so same. I'm like, oh shoot, I guess I could take that off.
Right, exactly. Like perfect. Okay, real quick before you go, I'll always love to play a this or that game really
Okay.
quick. So I'll give you super fast. You give me, if you want to elaborate, you can. If not, you can just kind of boom, boom, boom to
Okay.
wrap it up here. Okay. So this or that, reels or carousels, which do you prefer?
I prefer reels because I overthink my carousels. So personally, I do
Same.
reels.
Yep. Okay, stories or feed posts.
Ooh, stories. I can't live without them.
I was like, I know this. I'm like, I know this answer. Hashtags or SEO filled captions.
Ooh, God, that's tough. I'm still in the hashtags.
Okay.
That might change in
Yeah,
6
me
months,
too.
but right now I love my hashtags.
Fair enough. Do you prefer to have an aesthetic feed or a high engagement feed?
Ooh, high engagement.
Trending audio or original audio?
Original. I find personally, when
Really?
I talk to cameras, get more follows.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Daily posts or higher quality, fewer posts?
Ooh, higher quality, fewer. Yeah.
I love it. Influencer collabs or UGC created content?
Ooh, that's tough. I would say influencer. I love the big time content creators. I love it.
Perfect. And then last one, behind the scenes content or that polished curated posting?
Ooh, behind the scenes. I love raw, like off the cuff. I love when people like just hop on a reel and just go on a rant. It's like my favorite thing.
It's true. You're just like, whoa, like what
Like,
happened
oh my
to
God,
you?
you're pissed, and I love it.
Yes. And like, perfect. Like more of that, please. I love it. I love it. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to learn more about you and what you do, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, definitely DM me on Instagram. It might take me a little bit to get back. Sometimes they get a little flooded. And then my website too, like all my Reels Lab, I offer one-on-one support in there too. But yeah, I'm on Instagram a lot, LinkedIn and Threads and TikTok.
Fantastic.
So come find me
Fantastic.
wherever I am.
I love it. Shannon McKinstrie, it was a pleasure. I could talk to you all day. Truly,
Yeah,
I feel
this
like we're
was
best
so
friends
fun.
now. This was a
Thank you.
blast. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to chat. So hopefully we can do it again soon.
Awesome.
Fantastic. I appreciate it. And thank you, the listener, for tuning in today as well. As a reminder, the show is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me at Baxter Colburn or at Colburn Creative Co. on Instagram. And I look forward to having you on the next episode of Iconic Creators. We'll see you next time.